All right, we should be live. I wanted to go live a couple minutes early because I just have a few announcements per usual and make sure if you guys had any quick questions. So yeah, I'll get right into that. So announcement number one being this model is part of my all-female Kickstarter. If you haven't checked that out, check it out because I've added some new models. I'm really excited about it. And all patrons get benefits as well. In 2 months, you guys get the pre-supported STLs. So just letting you guys know. So I'm excited where that's going to go. The other one I had was that our painting contest is going really well. I put that on the website right here. And if you click on it, bam, they're big images and you can scroll through and look at it. And then if you hover over them, you will get information of who did it and what entry number they are. And that's how y'all will vote. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. Very excited. I think that's pretty much everything. Other than that, I'll wait for the next 2 minutes and teach you guys about poly painting and all that kind of good stuff. This will be a pretty quick lesson, but I think it's really important because learning to poly paint helped me more than I thought it would, and it was also less intuitive than I thought it would be. So I can try and smooth over any of those bumps and complications that I definitely had. And then of course, like always, if you are watching this in the future, definitely ask me questions in the Discord as well, because I know this can be complicated and it's very, very easy to miss like small details or button clicks that I'm doing. So yeah, gotta hang out for the next couple minutes and then we'll get started. In the meantime, if you guys have any quick questions, let me know. If not, I will answer them after the lesson is over. All right. I love this model so much. I think she's so cute. Obviously, I'm doing the unposed version of her because that's when I tend to poly paint stuff because it just saves me some time. Making sure I get live chat set up. That way I can see you guys with any questions or comments. There we go. See, about 1 minute left and then we'll get started. I never had to do it this time. I thought my announcements would take longer, but they didn't. It was just the Kickstarter and the painting competition. That was it. Hey, Kat. My evening has been going really well. Thank you. Yeah, I have chat off the screen now, so people in the future, this will make less sense, but that's okay. All right, it is 6 o'clock, so let's get into this lesson. I went to the Pixologic website, and I snipped a little thing I wanted to go over quickly in the first place. Just like some vocab, because there's mRGB, RGB, and M, and these all are different things that you should know for poly painting. So mRGB just means that it's going to affect the tool's color or material, and the tool is just whatever you have open. That's whatever your object is. RGB is only color, and M is only material. I just want to go over that right from the get-go because even though it's pretty intuitive once you know, I had some problems with it because I didn't know. Z-add and Z-sub are indicating whether or not your brush is affecting the model like physically, not just with paint. So now that I've mentioned all those little terms, let's see where they're actually located. So if I hold spacebar, that's where they all are. So mRGB, RGB, M, and Z-add and Z-sub. So if you're painting and you have Z-add or Z-sub active, you're going to have problems if you don't want to actually be sculpting on your model, because you can sculpt on your model and paint at the same time, which can be really, really cool because when I was detailing like my fire elemental, I was able to carve out and add material and details of the flames in yellow. So I was doing like 2 birds, 1 stone kind of thing. But just keep that in mind when you're doing this. Now that I go over a little bit of terminology, I just want to mention the point of all this before we get too much farther. So poly painting is super helpful because it helps establish the tone and the personality of your character. So for instance, I think my furball here is very, very cute. And without poly paint, I also think she's cute, but I don't know if her personality comes across as well. I think the reddish hair does a really good job, and the bluish skin tone is really what's makes furbolgs. It makes them stand out so much, other than their size, of course, and they're naturally kind of like druid-like nature. With that being said, I feel like this adds so much more to it, and it made it easier making design choices as modeling her, because seeing her in all of these like earthy and forest tones really made me more aware of that when I was modeling her. Like, for instance, it made it a lot easier for me to model her boots because, like, okay, you know what? She's definitely walking in the woods a lot. They would do well with mud, probably like leather material, and it just makes it a lot easier to make those design choices. So let's go over like the very, very like basics. So let's like grab her little tunic here, for example. So if you hold Alt on your keyboard and then click on anything on your model, it will select that. So as you can see over here, my subtool palette, this is highlighted. A quick note, even though I do have a custom UI, everything that I'm doing in this lesson will be totally easy and accessible to you guys as well. Your tool palette will be on the right side, just like this, even in the standard UI. The only difference is I put my color palette on top. You can do that by clicking on color and then grabbing this little box right here. There you go. You tap on that and then it pops over here. So that's the only difference that's really going to be affecting this live stream. Other than that, the custom UI won't matter. All right. So now that I have this piece selected, I click on solo to make sure it actually is selected. I can go ahead and change this color to, like, let's say we want to do it to like this really obnoxious like green, for example. So I click fill object. You can do that in your color palette here, right here, fill object. And there you go. Now I have this really bright green. Now something I do want to note, the material I have selected, this MP Chav, it's downloaded from the Pixologic website, already has the skin tone color to it. So if I put white on here and click fill object, it's not really white. And that's again because the material already has a color to it. So if you want to avoid problems like that, make sure you pick a material that is white or blank to start with. All the standard materials down here are really helpful because they don't have any shadows put in them automatically. So what I mean by that is the materials up here, if I wanted to go to lighting and add another light source, like right here, and make it blue and put it a different direction and stuff, it's not going to come across because these matte caps up here, these matte caps up here already have shadows in them. So again, standard materials is what you're going to want to pick if you want the most flexibility in choosing color and lighting. I happen to really just like the matte caps because they naturally look better because they have like that constant shadow rendering going on pretty much all the time. So I tend to go with this. Now I could go with the matte cap white, which is right next to it, and now it should be in white. So everything looks more pale, but you'll notice that my little tunic here is actually a true white as indicated on my color palette rather than just skin color. So it can be a little harder to color your model if you already have one of these colors on there because you're going to have to correct a little bit because everything in this case will be more peachy or skin tone. So something else you can do is, other than just changing the color of each object, like for instance, I can make this like a bright blue as well by clicking fill object. You can change the material on just that object. So if you hold spacebar to bring up this little menu, and then you can go ahead and click like just M for material. So now I only have material that's affected. So since material is selected, I can go to like this chrome right here, for example, and click fill object. So now this object should stay chrome when I change to something else. See? So now I switched back to my matte cap to my MP Chav, but notice how these stayed chrome. So they're staying a different material because I have specifically specified that in my options here. Something that can be a little complicated and confusing with this is that when I go through here and I change my material to like gold, for example, it changes the entire model. So you think that it's actually being changed, but it's not. So if you don't specify what the material is, ZBrush is just going to change the entire model. So this can be very challenging when you are trying to change colors early on because you'll drag this cursor around. Every time you drag that around, it's going to change the color of the entire model. Since I've already poly painted a lot of her, unfortunately I can't, here we go, show it super well, but see right here, for example, I have nothing selected, so it's just coloring the entire model. Another tip just to mention to you guys, I know there's a lot of information in this lesson, so again, if you're in the future or present, ask me questions. This little paintbrush icon, that's what that's supposed to be, will toggle your paint on and off. Now, if you want to go through and unpaint your entire model, you could click on all of it one by one, or hold Shift on your keyboard and just tap one of them, and it will remove all of the paint. Similarly, to bring it back, hold Shift and tap. There you go. So far we have gone through how to change the color of one object. We've gone through how to assign material to one object, and also just some quirks about ZBrush, how it will change the entire color or material if you don't already have anything assigned. Something that tends to help me knowing whether or not an object actually has color or material assigned to it is looking at the little preview in these boxes. So right here I can tell that this shirt is actually green, this is actually brown, because the little icon here shows me it is. If it wasn't, it would just show that like blank matte cap color. Now let's go a little more into like actual painting techniques, because like her face, for example, isn't just one color. There's a lot going on here. So I'm going to select her face, and I'm going to remove the poly paint from this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click the color that I want, click on paint, make sure Z add and Z sub isn't on because obviously I don't want to do that, and just paint over her face right now. So now her face is all just the same color as what I started with. So it can be kind of tricky when you're looking at a model and you're like, especially because I have this skin tone color under it to help me out. It can be hard because I'm like, well, what if I want to add like a blush to her, for example? So I go in here and I add blush, and it's like, oh my god, it's so strong. It looks terrible. So what you can do is you can hold spacebar and reduce your RGB intensity to like 10 or 11. And now it's a much more subtle pink that's being added. So I'll probably add that to her nose and the tips of her ears as well. Even then, it's not quite the pink that I wanted, and it can be very, very tricky to grab the colors you want. So if you're not great with like color theory and stuff like that, you can find an image that you like and color pick directly from that. So I'll show you what I did. If you want to import an image to do that with, go to Texture, Import, and then just wherever your image was, I liked this one a lot, and then upload that. Once you've clicked on that, you can click on your texture box right here and click on the image that you uploaded. Finally, go to this little area here. It said add the spotlight, and now you will have that image really big right here. You'll need to rescale that, of course. So just click on scale and rotate counterclockwise, and then I'll move that up here. I'll actually make it a little bigger too. You also might want to change the opacity. You can scroll clockwise or counterclockwise to get that. So there you go. Once you have this, you can click C on your keyboard, C for color, and it will pick the color that is shown. So let's see. Let's see if this is going to work the way it's supposed to. So I have orange selected right now. To click C right here. It's not quite showing up because I don't have Spotlight active. If this wheel isn't showing up, then you're not in your Spotlight mode. You can make this wheel show up and go away by clicking Z, as in zebra, on your keyboard. So now that I have done that, so I made sure this was up, I held over this blue tone skin I wanted and clicked on C, and now you'll see when I hold spacebar, I have that blue tone selected right here. Now I mentioned I was having trouble picking this pinkish tone, so let's go ahead and do that. I'll click Z to bring this up, I'll hover over her nose, click C for color, and then now clicking Z to get rid of this again. And then spacebar, I can see I have this really nice pink selected. It's kind of a darker tone than I expect. So now I can go through and paint. Sometimes what will happen though is nothing will happen. That's because you're in Spotlight, and Spotlight is for putting textures on your model. Anyway, just go to Brush and click Samples, and then click off a Spotlight projection. You only have to do that once, and then it'll work just fine. So now I can go through, I have this really nice purple tone that I just color picked directly from my reference. And there you go. That's looking much, much, much better. Similarly, I would like this tone for her lip color. So I'll make the draw brush smaller, and then go ahead and paint that in. And that's looking really nice already. I can click C on her hair, so C for color once again, and I can go ahead and paint in her eyebrow color too. So already this is looking so much better than it was before. There's a lot more personality here. I'll add some shadow to her eyes as well. Now, you'll notice I had like freckles on her before, and this is the trick I did for that. Hold spacebar and then go to alpha. I like this alpha right here, alpha oh 07 for, that's what it's called for me, for freckles. Now, if you have this selected and you just go in and just like try and like draw, it just makes this really mottled. It's hard to have a lot of control over it. So what I recommend is holding spacebar again and going from dots to drag rectangle. So now when you click on your tablet, don't let go, just hold down and then drag. And then you'll be able to kind of pick whatever size and have a lot more control over how you want the freckles to look. They look a little too strong right now, so I'll change the RGB intensity down to like 20 or so. There we go. Now I recommend having symmetry turned off, otherwise you get this really weird effect. And plus, freckles shouldn't be like perfectly symmetrical anyway. And I'll just go ahead and go through here and add some freckles to her. There we go. So this model already has a lot more personality to it, and it's already just looking much, much better. And I can go turn this off and turn my brush back to dots. And now it's going to work like normal again, where I can just kind of paint whatever direction I want. Something that I see beginners struggle with a lot is they worry about painting realistically. So they're worried about adding highlights, adding shadows, all that kind of stuff. You don't need to worry about that because this is a 3D model, therefore it will interact in a 3D space with a lighting source. You can't do that with a 2D image, is what I'm trying to say. Since it's already 3D, there is a rendering software in ZBrush that will simulate the lighting and shadows for you. So don't bother painting it because it's going to do it for you. You can help it out if you want to. Like I might add the inner tone of her lips to be a little bit darker, but for the most part, let ZBrush do it for you. If you hold Shift and then R for render, you're going to get BPR, so it's your best preview render just automatically. This actually looks pretty good just from the start. But notice how I didn't need to go in here and paint the shadow on her cheekbone and her ear, for example. It's just being done for me. If I go into light and then drag this around, it will change which direction the light source is coming from. So now that I've put it on the right side, it will flip over to the right side. It didn't for this one because I'm using a matte cap. Oh no, I just didn't change the... Make sure you click on the light bulb that's on. I was on this one by accident. There we go. So I'll put it like under here. It should illuminate from like the bottom right now. There we go, and it did. So it's a totally different look because the light source is somewhere over here. So as the light comes up and hits her nose, it casts a shadow right here. So it's really cool to be able to play with this. Now you can change your lighting color and stuff. I have it white light right now to whatever color you want. But as I mentioned earlier, even though I have this as like here, we'll say like neon blue light. See, it's neon blue. It's not going to come across as neon blue because I have this matte cap on here that already has a color. See how it looks exactly the same? If I were to change my matte cap to like, here you go, to one of these, see how these are all tinted in blue now? That's because they're interacting with the light color that I specified. So if I go to lighting again, and let's say I click on like pink, and now I bring up that matte cap material menu, now they're all gonna be pink. There you go. So just keep that in mind that you don't have as much control over the lighting controls in general if you pick a matte cap that already has a material assigned to it, because it already has its own color and it already has its own lighting physics. It's totally fine to use these. I use them all the time because I think they look better. But there we go. I know this has been I thought this was going to be an intro to basics. I forgot how complicated Polypaint can be. So just a quick summary. We have covered, let's see, how long has it been? It's been a very dense 15 minutes. Okay. We have covered how to assign material, how to change the color of an object, some light painting techniques, and then lighting in general and how to manipulate that. And then the last thing I kind of covered there was in the middle of the lesson was like kind of the quirks about ZBrush. Like when you don't have any of your model painted, when you go over here to select a color, it's going to change your entire model. Don't worry about it. Just keep picking the colors that you want. Keep clicking fill object, and then the ones that you have filled will stop changing color. But it might just be a little overwhelming in the first place. Spotlight here can be a little finicky because there's a lot of buttons to click. Because again, you have to click Z, as in zebra, to bring up this wheel, then C for color, and then Z again. And now you have that color picked. But once you have it somewhere on your model, you don't have to keep going back to this image. You can keep just clicking C on what you want. So if you look over here where I have my color palette docked, as I click C on different parts of the model, you can see that color changing. So now I have white, brown, blue, red. So you get my point. Once it's somewhere on your model, you don't have to keep going back to your spotlight image. You can also go to like Photoshop or Illustrator and paint out your own palette, for example. Let's see if I can Google this really quick and bring it onto the screen on my other monitor. All right. Here we go. So if you're to like Google Images, for example, and put in like skin palette, here are a bunch of different collections of colors, and you could bring these into ZBrush as well, and then just have really nice skin palette colors to draw from directly. Because color is much harder than you probably think until you start doing it. Again, there's reasons why there's entire classes about color theory in art schools and stuff. I mean, it's more than just classes or entire like years dedicated to understanding how everything interacts and the way that our brain interprets the colors too. For example, the color palette I have for her, it's very like dark, earthy forest tones. So she comes across as very down to earth. If I painted this as if I did this, like this, her cuff here with like this neon blue chrome, it's very conflicting for the design. It's a little harder to understand. And the last reason that I really recommend polypainting your models is if you're doing it for 3D printing. I know the majority taking this class are doing this to 3D print your own models. And ideally, you want other people to print them, or just yourself, and then paint them. Because that's kind of the final step to making a mini really look the best that it can look. And once you're painting a model, it's going to make you think about, oh, is this really paintable? Are these details prominent enough to even show up with paint? So yeah. That's pretty much everything. I know it's a very full lesson. Thank you guys for bearing through all of that information. We're about 20 minutes in now, so I'm going to open up for any questions that we have. And I'm also going to read through the chat because I see Kat has a lot of really helpful things to say, probably. All right. Kat mentioned the fact that color not just comes from their selected color, but also the material confused her a few times. Because it's like you put white and it's just not white and you don't understand why. So yeah, again, don't forget to check your matte Kat because that took me a long time to figure out too. All right. And then Kat has some really good tips if you're familiar with Photoshop to think of the material, color, and RGB as like two different layers, which is a very good point. Awesome. Yeah, it looks like Kat is pretty much on the same page. So I'm talking about using Spotlight is really, really helpful. That way you can kind of pick the colors. Kat mentioned like blonde is a notoriously hard color to pick because it ends up looking too brown or too green. Because if you go to your color wheel, obviously blonde is this yellow here. It's between green and brown. So it's really tricky to pick it. I tend to go towards the more brown side rather than green. It tends to look a little better, but it really just depends. All right. I think we're all good. Yeah, so Kat mentioned that you can do 2-point or 3-point lighting. So your character can have like rim lighting, putting it behind it, which can be really pretty. So if you want to activate more lighting or camera effects, just click on this light bulb here, and now that light is also active. And then you can interact with this, drag it to where you... So if you guys don't understand that, that pink dot is showing where the light is. So think about this being like a flashlight. So obviously if I have a flashlight that's like under my chin like this, it's going to light up the bottom and look really spooky. If I do it just from the side here, it's going to be a much more natural light coming in. You can adjust the intensity, how far away that light is from the model, and the color of it. Ambient lighting is just the lighting around the model. I'll probably do a more intense demo further on about getting a professional lighting setup and whatnot. But this should just give you more than enough what you need to know for the basics of how to polypaint your model and kind of just help bring it to life a bit more. The biggest thing I want you guys to take away from this is the difference between mRGB, RGB, and M, and making sure your Z add and Z sub aren't selected. Because, for example, say it's something this is something I didn't cover. If I wanted to smooth this out, if I hold shift like normal, it will smooth out the paint, but it's also smoothing out her nose. See here? This is before and after. See how much her nose is in definition? So just make sure that when you hold shift, hold spacebar, and make sure you click off of Z add. So that way your smooth brush is just affecting the paint, and it's not going to be affecting the actual sculpt of the model. That's the tip I probably should have mentioned. Now you guys know. So Kat mentioned to get a really good blonde, get to blend a bunch of shades together. A single shade never quite looks right. That is very, very true. Other hair colors are so much easier, and yeah, I totally agree. Something else to kind of mention to you guys to make stuff look cool. I mentioned earlier how to do freckles, right? So clicking drag rectangle and then picking an alpha. You don't have to pick an alpha. If you just pick, like, say I click C for this red right here, and I can drag this down to a darker color. And then I can go through here and add like a gradient to her hair just by clicking and dragging. So see how the ends of her hair are already much, much darker. It can be really cool to add gradients to stuff. It's a really easy, cheap way to make things look cool. Kind of get the point. I think the demo with this model is pretty much done. I'm actually going to open up my Angelic Cleric that I made yesterday because I used gradients on like the entire model, and I can show you guys how easy it is to make a model look impressive just by adding a few gradients. So I have gradient on her wings here and on her hair, and then this back of her cloak. And actually her bottles and the bags too. I put it everywhere. So just kind of like a reminder that, like, you don't have to overthink things. Gradients can be fantastic and go a very, very long way to making your model look impressive. Similarly here, my lighting setup, it's just straight on lighting, but the way that I adjusted this is going to render and then BPR shadow. These are the settings I have. Usually I don't have F strength to 1, I have less than that. F strength and G strength, they're just the strength of your shadows. The only things you really need to pay attention to is these top 4 are important, blur, and gamma. Those are the only ones I mess with. I'm sure the other ones can be helpful, but just for quick renders that look pretty good, those are like the 6 settings I recommend. These top 4 here, blur, and gamma. And then these settings right here are probably good enough. If you reduce gamma and make it darker, pretty much if you reduce any of these, it will make it softer and darker in general. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. If you guys have any questions, I will hang out for a few minutes. But other than that, that's everything for this lesson. Again, for anyone who is in the future right now, and this was just super confusing or over your head, definitely make sure to message me in the Discord. Everyone there is super helpful and be able to help you out. And if you're a little bit more shy, just rewatch this video. I'm sure you'll pick up whatever you missed, or join me for a live stream. Because I obviously have classes every Sunday, but I also live stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, pretty much without fail. I tend to live stream almost every day. And you always can ask me questions live. I tend to recognize your guys' usernames from the Discord on YouTube as well. So I kind of give you guys like priority. If I see your guys' name in the chat, I usually make sure to like, what do they say? Was it a question? Or to make sure you guys are getting as much information as possible from these lessons and that kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. I find these lessons really fun, and Polypainting is something that I have only started doing recently, which is really, really helpful. Oh yeah, and Kat had a great tip here. The best part is it's all digital, so you can easily undo or fill with a solid color to start over. Have fun experimenting and play with polypainting. Yes, try silly colors. I totally agree. Goof off. It makes it so much more fun. Like this angel here, when I first started trying to do it, I gave her like these pastel pinks and blues and greens, and she just looked so soft, and I didn't like it. And I went with this more like a blood angel look, and I'm so much happier with it. So when in doubt, don't try to overthink it, and just keep trying colors. You'll eventually find something that you like. I actually have the live stream for the creation of this angel available to you guys. It's like a 3.5-hour long live stream, and you'll see how much I changed the colors on her and just kind of the process of that. I highly recommend clicking through that if you haven't seen it already, because that'll probably help you out too. All right, I think I've pretty much answered everything that I needed to. I'm probably gonna sign off here. Thank you guys so much for joining, and like always, Discord. If you have questions, let me know. You can always email me, but when you ask me questions and I answer you one-on-one where no one else can see it, then no one else is learning too. That's the biggest reason why I harp on that. Obviously, if you're super shy, I totally understand. If you're more comfortable, send me a direct message or email. You can totally do that too. So make sure you guys know that. All right, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a great night, morning, evening, wherever you are. And that's it. So bye, guys.